Jungkook knelt down not for a proposal. His words made Jimin burst into tears male loudly. The room gasped when Jungkook dropped to one knee, not with a velvet box but with shaking hands pressed to the floor, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I'm sorry for the night I chose silence and let you bleed alone." The lights were still on, harsh and white, reflecting off mirrors that had seen them practice until dawn, argue until throats burned, and forgive without ever numbing the wound. Jimin froze mid-step, breath hitching as if the air itself had turned to glass. The music had stopped, but the echo of it still throbbed in his ears, a phantom beat that matched the panic in his chest. Jungkook's eyes were wet, dark lashes clumped together, and for a terrifying second Jimin thought this was a joke staged for cameras. Another performance meant to trend, to feed an audience that loved them loud and unbroken. But there were no cameras. The smell of sweat and resin hung in the room, familiar and intimate, and the only sound was Jungkook's breathing, ragged, uneven, human. He didn't look up. He stayed kneeling, spine bowed as if he'd finally set down a weight he'd carried for years. Jimin felt his knees weaken. He tasted salt before he realized he was crying. He remembered the night Jungkook spoke of without nomming it, the rain, the phone vibrating and then going still. The message Jimin typed and erased, pride wrestling with fear until both lost. He remembered how he'd smiled the next day, how he'd laughed on cue, how he'd taught himself to tuck pain into the same place he stored choreography counts and stage marks. Survival habits, learned early and practiced often. Jungkook swallowed, voice trembling. "I thought if I stayed quiet it would pass. I thought you were stronger than this." He finally lifted his gaze, and the shame there was raw, almost unbearable. "I was wrong. You were strong because you had to be, and I let you be alone." Jimin's sob tore out of him, sharp and loud, ricocheting off the walls. He clutched his chest like he could keep his heart from breaking again. The room blurred. He hated that his body betrayed him like this, hated the years of training that taught him to cry pretty, to cry silently. This wasn't pretty. This was the sound of a dam failing. They had met as boys who learned to measure themselves by applause. Jungkook's fear had always been disappointing the world. Jimin had always been disappearing inside it. Their habits betrayed them even now, Jungkook confessing through action, lowering himself physically to match the weight of his words. Jimin responding with tears because he'd learned that speaking hurt more than bleeding quietly. "I didn't need a ring," Jimin managed, the words ripped from somewhere deep. "I needed you to hear me." Jungkook nodded, over and over like prayer. "I'm here, I hear you. I will keep hearing you even when it scares me." Memory pressed in, layered and relentless. The rehearsal rooms where Jungkook stayed late, perfecting what was already perfect, terrified of becoming ordinary. The hotel corridors where Jimin stared at patterned carpets, counting steps to keep his hands from shaking. The way they'd grown fluent in each other's smiles, illiterate in each other's pain. Jungkook rose slowly, careful, as if sudden movement might shatter what they were building. He didn't reach for Jimin at first. He waited. That was new. That patience cracked something open in Jimin's chest. He stepped forward, the floor cool under his palms as he pulled Jungkook into him, forehead to shoulder, breath to breath. Jungkook smelled like soap and metal and home. "I was scared," Jungkook whispered into his hair, "of choosing you and losing everything else, of choosing everything else and losing you anyway." Jimin laughed wetly, a broken sound that carried relief inside it. "We already lost parts of each other. This is us choosing to find them." They stayed there, grounded by the quiet. Outside, a city hummed, indifferent and vast. Inside, two men relearned how to be honest without an audience. Jungkook's hands trembled, then steadied. Jimin's crying slowed, the storm easing into rain. Later, they would talk about boundaries and nights when silence wasn't an option. They would argue and forgive and fail and try again. The world would still watch, still demand spectacle. But this moment belonged to them alone, a kneel that wasn't a proposal, a confession that rewrote the past, a choice made without applause. When they finally pulled apart, Jungkook pressed his forehead to Jimin and smiled through tears. "Not a ring," he said softly, "a promise to speak." Jimin wiped his face, eyes red but clear. "Then stay standing with me," he replied. "We walk forward together." And they did, leaving the room not healed, but honest, carrying a truth heavy enough to hurt and gentle enough to hold. The door slammed harder than Jimin intended, the echo snapping through the hallway like a gunshot, and Jungkook flinched because the sound carried every unsaid word between them. "Don't walk away from me," Jungkook said, voice sharp now, the softness from earlier stripped bare by fear. "Not again." Jimin turned, eyes still swollen, jaw tight as if holding his heart in place by force. "You don't get to decide when I stay," he shot back. "You already decided once. You chose silence, remember." The hallway lights buzzed overhead, too bright, too exposed. Somewhere down the corridor, laughter spilled from another room, careless and cruel in its normalcy. Jungkook stepped closer anyway, each footfall deliberate, as if he were crossing a battlefield mapped by memories. "I remember every second," Jungkook said. "I remember staring at my phone until my hands went numb. I remember typing your name and deleting it because I was afraid of what I'd hear if you answered." Jimin laughed bitterly. "So you saved yourself. Congratulations." "That's not what happened," Jungkook snapped, then stopped, chest heaving. He dragged a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd never managed to break. "I thought if I didn't open that door, the monster behind it wouldn't be real. I was wrong. It was real, and it hurt you." The word hurt landed heavy between them. Jimin's shoulders sagged just a little, exhaustion leaking through the anger. "Do you know what it's like," he said quietly, "to stand on stage with a smile glued to your face while your chest feels hollow? To tell yourself you're dramatic, that you're weak, that you should just be grateful." Jungkook's throat tightened. "I watched you every day and told myself you were fine because I needed you to be." "That's the problem," Jimin said, voice breaking. "You needed me to be fine. You didn't need to know the truth." Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Jungkook felt something ugly crawl up his spine, shame, hot and relentless. He had faced critics, scandals, screaming crowds. But nothing terrified him like this, Jimin seeing him clearly. "I was taught," Jungkook said slowly, "that love is endurance, that if you can survive quietly, you're winning. I didn't know how to sit in pain without trying to outrun it." Jimin studied him, eyes searching, as if weighing whether this confession was another performance. "And now?" he asked. Jungkook met his gaze, unflinching. "Now I'm scared of losing you more than I'm scared of being exposed." That did it. The anger in Jimin's eyes faltered, replaced by something raw and dangerous, hope. "You don't get points for being brave late," he whispered. "You know that, right?" "I know," Jungkook said. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to do better where it actually hurts." Footsteps approached, then slowed, then retreated, whoever it was deciding not to interrupt the tension humming like a live wire. The world kept intruding, reminding them that privacy was temporary, fragile. Jimin exhaled shakily. "I hate that I still care," he admitted. "I hate that one apology can shake years of walls I built to survive you." Jungkook stepped closer, close enough to feel Jimin's warmth, but he didn't touch him. "Then let me stand outside those walls," he said. "I won't climb unless you ask me to." Jimin closed his eyes. He remembered nights when Jungkook's laughter was the only thing that pulled him out of his head, mornings when a shared glance felt like oxygen. He also remembered the ache of being unseen. "You kneeling earlier," Jimin said, voice low. "That wasn't romantic, that was terrifying." "I know," Jungkook replied. "It was me admitting I don't know how to lead us anymore without hurting you." Jimin opened his eyes, tears threatening again. "I don't need you to lead," he said. "I need you beside me, even when I'm ugly, even when I'm angry, especially then." Jungkook nodded, lips pressed together, eyes shining. "Then be angry with me, yell at me, say everything you swallowed." Jimin let out a shaky breath, then another, and suddenly the words came flooding out, accusations, confessions, nights of resentment, moments of longing. He spoke until his voice cracked and his chest ached, until there was nothing left to hide. Jungkook listened, fists clenched at his sides, absorbing every blow because he knew this pain was overdue. When Jimin finally fell silent, the hallway felt different, like air after a storm. I'm still here, Jungkook said softly. Jimin nodded, wiping his face. So am I, but this doesn't fix everything. No, Jungkook agreed. It just tells the truth. They stood there, not touching, not leaving, balanced on the edge of something fragile and real. Outside, the noise of the world surged closer, schedules and expectations pressing in. Inside that narrow hallway, two hearts beat out of sync but no longer pretending they were alone. For the first time, the tension wasn't about what they might lose, but about whether they were brave enough to face what loving honestly would demand. The elevator doors slid shut with a dull thud, sealing them inside a narrow box of mirrored walls and humming tension, and Jimin felt his pulse spike when Jungkook hit the stop button halfway down. "What are you doing?" Jimin demanded, voice sharp, reflexive. Jungkook didn't turn around immediately. His reflection stared back at him from every angle, eyes red, jaw tight, shoulders squared like he was bracing for impact. "I'm choosing not to run," he said. "You told me to stay, so I'm staying." The elevator lights flickered once, then steadied. The silence that followed was electric, the kind that pressed against the skin. Jimin crossed his arms, not for warmth but for control. "You think trapping me in here proves something?" "No," Jungkook replied, finally facing him. "I think leaving again would destroy everything we just said." Jimin scoffed, but it lacked conviction. "You're dramatic." "You're terrified," Jungkook shot back, heat flaring. "And so am I." That landed harder than any insult. Jimin's breath caught, his gaze darting away before snapping back. "Don't pretend you understand my fear," he said. "You're not the one whose pain gets turned into rumors. You're not the one everyone analyzes when you don't smile the right way." Jungkook stepped closer, the elevator suddenly too small for all that history. "You think I don't get dissected," he said, voice rising despite himself. "You think I don't wake up wondering which version of me they'll love today and which one they'll tear apart." "Then why did you let me drown alone?" Jimin demanded, tears flashing hot and fast. "If you understood even a little, why did you disappear when I needed you most?" The words hit like a slap. Jungkook flinched but didn't retreat. "Because I was a coward," he said plainly. "Because I was raised to believe strength meant shutting up and pushing through. And because I was scared that if I admitted how bad it was for you, I'd have to admit how bad it was for me too." The confession cracked something open between them. The hum of the elevator seemed louder, the smell of metal and cologne sharp in the air. Jimin's chest rose and fell erratically. "So what?" he said bitterly. "We were both broken and just ignored it." "Yes," Jungkook answered, "and it nearly destroyed us." Jimin leaned back against the mirrored wall, his reflection staring back, eyes swollen, lips trembling, a man exhausted by pretending. "I hated you," he whispered. "Not all the time, just in the quiet moments, when I realized I loved you more than you loved me." Jungkook's breath hitched. That was never true. "It felt true," Jimin snapped, "and feelings don't care about facts." Jungkook reached out, then stopped himself midair, fingers curling into a fist. "Tell me what you need," he said hoarsely. "Not what I should have done, what you need now." Jimin laughed softly, brokenly. "That's the scariest question you could ask." "Ask me anyway," Jungkook said. Jimin swallowed, throat tight. "I need honesty that doesn't wait until everything is falling apart," he said. "I need you to fight for me when it's inconvenient. And I need to know that if the world turns ugly, you won't choose safety over me again." The elevator felt impossibly quiet. Jungkook nodded slowly, like each word was being carved into him. "Then hear this," he said, voice low and fierce. "I choose you even when it costs me, even when it scares me, even when I don't know how to be perfect." Jimin's eyes filled again, but this time he didn't look away. "Don't promise things you can't keep." "I'm not promising perfection," Jungkook replied. "I'm promising presence." The elevator jolted slightly as Jungkook released the stop button. It began to descend again, smooth and inevitable, just like the future pressing toward them. Jimin wiped his tears with the back of his hand, shoulders shaking. "You really mess me up," he muttered. Jungkook let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "You mess me up too." Their eyes met, and for a moment the world narrowed to that fragile understanding. Not healed, not fixed, but real. When the doors finally opened, noise and light flooded in, staff voices, footsteps, life continuing as if nothing monumental had just happened. Jimin hesitated, then stepped out. After a beat, Jungkook followed, falling into stride beside him. They didn't touch. They didn't smile. But they walked forward together, carrying a truth that was loud, controversial, and impossible to ignore, one that would demand courage every single day. The dressing room door was barely closed when the argument reignited, sharper this time, stripped of the controlled quiet they had clung to moments ago. "You think walking side by side fixes it?" Jimin snapped, tossing his jacket onto the couch with more force than necessary. "You think people won't notice the tension, the silence, the cracks?" Jungkook shut the door fully, his hand lingering on the handle as if bracing himself. "I think pretending everything's fine is what's killing us," he said. "And I'm done lying for them, for you, for myself." "That's easy for you to say," Jimin shot back, spinning around. "You disappear and reappear with an apology and suddenly you're brave. I had to survive the in-between." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "You think I wasn't suffering in that silence too?" Jimin laughed, sharp and wounded. "Suffering quietly is your specialty. Mine is smiling through it so no one gets uncomfortable." The words hung heavy, controversial, dangerous. Jungkook stepped forward, frustration bleeding into his voice. "Do you hear yourself? You're punishing me for the very thing you taught me, how to hide." Jimin froze. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His hands trembled as he clenched them into fists. "I never wanted you to learn that from me," he whispered. "I wanted you to save me from it." Jungkook's eyes softened painfully. "I wanted you to save me too." The room smelled of makeup remover and old leather, the air thick with unspoken truths. Outside, a manager's voice echoed faintly, calling schedules, reminding them the world did not pause for emotional reckoning. "They're waiting," Jimin muttered. "They always are." Jungkook's voice dropped. "And what about us?" Jimin looked up, eyes blazing. "That's the problem. There was never time for us. Just roles, expectations. Rumors we're not allowed to confirm or deny." Jungkook exhaled sharply. "Then say it anyway." Jimin stared at him. "Say what?" "That you matter to me," Jungkook said, stepping closer. "That losing you would break me more than any headline ever could." Jimin's breath hitched. "You don't understand what you're asking." "I do," Jungkook replied. "I'm asking you to trust that I won't flinch this time." Silence crashed over them. Jimin's eyes glistened as he shook his head. "I don't know if I can survive another betrayal." Jungkook reached out then, slow and deliberate. Fingers brushing Jimin's wrist. Jimin stiffened but didn't pull away. The contact sent a jolt through both of them. "I won't swear forever," Jungkook said quietly. "I'll swear today, I'll show you tomorrow, and the day after that." Jimin swallowed hard. "You sound like you're begging." "I am," Jungkook admitted. "Not on my knees this time, but with everything I have left." Jimin's composure finally shattered. Tears streamed freely as he leaned forward, forehead pressing into Jungkook's chest. The sob that tore from him was raw, unfiltered, years overdue. "I was so lonely," Jimin cried, "even with you right there." Jungkook wrapped his arms around him without hesitation, holding him tight, protective, real. "I'm here now," he whispered, "and I'm not leaving when it gets ugly." They stayed like that, breathing each other in, while the world outside grew impatient. When Jimin finally pulled back, his eyes were red but steady. "This changes things," he said. Jungkook nodded. "It has to." They didn't know what would happen next, what storms honesty would bring, what sacrifices it would demand. But for the first time, neither of them was pretending the cost didn't exist. And that truth, as terrifying as it was, felt like the beginning of something they had never been brave enough to name. The knock came hard and sudden, rattling the dressing room door and slicing through the fragile calm like a blade. "You're on in 5. A voice called from the other side, brisk and professional, oblivious to the emotional wreckage inside. Jimin stiffened in Jungkook's arms and pulled away immediately, wiping his face with practiced speed. The transformation was almost violent, pain shoved back behind muscle memory, posture straightened, smile rehearsed but not yet worn. Jungkook watched it happen and felt something twist painfully in his chest. "See," Jimin said quietly, bitter amusement curling his lips. "This is what always wins." Jungkook's hands dropped to his sides, fingers flexing as if he'd lost something physical. "You don't have to do it like that," he said. "Not with me." Jimin met his eyes in the mirror. "I don't know any other way." The door opened a crack and a manager peeked in, eyes flicking between them, sensing tension but choosing ignorance. "Everything okay?" "Fine," Jimin answered instantly, the words smooth and convincing. Jungkook said nothing. When the door closed again, the silence that followed was heavier than before. Jungkook let out a slow breath. "That's what scares me," he said. "How easy it is for you to erase yourself." Jimin bristled. "Don't psychoanalyze me right now." "I'm not," Jungkook shot back, heat flaring again. "I'm watching someone I love disappear in real time." The word love hung between them, explosive and undeniable. Jimin's breath stuttered. "You don't get to say that like it's simple." "I know it's not simple," Jungkook said, voice rising. "That's why it matters." Jimin turned away, packing the room like a caged animal. "You think saying it changes the rules? You think it won't make things worse?" "Yes," Jungkook replied without hesitation. "And no, I think it will make things harder and more honest." Jimin stopped abruptly, spinning around. "Honest gets people hurt." "So does silence," Jungkook snapped. "You're living proof." The words cut deep. Jimin's composure cracked, anger flaring hot and bright. "You don't get to use my pain as an argument." "I'm using it as a reason," Jungkook said fiercely. "A reason to stop pretending this is sustainable." Jimin's voice shook as he shot back. "And what happens when honesty costs us everything? When it ruins careers, dreams, the lives we built?" Jungkook stepped closer, eyes blazing. "Then at least we'll lose it as ourselves, not as empty versions built to survive." For a long moment, Jimin said nothing. His chest rose and fell rapidly, emotions warring across his face: fear, longing, resentment, love. Finally, his voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know if I'm brave enough to burn everything down." Jungkook softened, reaching out again, slower this time. "I'm not asking you to burn it down," he said. "I'm asking you to stop setting yourself on fire to keep it standing." That broke him. Jimin's breath hitched violently, a sob clawing its way out as he covered his mouth, tears spilling despite his efforts. "I'm so tired," he admitted. "I'm tired of being strong. I'm tired of being careful." Jungkook pulled him in again, tighter this time, his own eyes burning. "Then don't be careful with me," he murmured. "Be real, even if it's messy, especially if it's messy." They stood there clinging to each other, two men caught between love and consequence, honesty and fear. Somewhere outside, music started, the distant roar of an audience growing louder, demanding their perfect selves. Jimin pulled back slowly, resting his forehead against Jungkook's. "After this," he said softly, "no more running." Jungkook nodded, a tear finally slipping free. "After this, we face it together." They straightened their clothes, wiped their faces, and walked toward the door, not healed, not fearless, but changed. And as they stepped into the blinding lights and deafening noise, something irreversible settled between them. For the first time, the performance wasn't the most dangerous thing they were about to face. The stage lights exploded around them, white and blinding, swallowing every private confession they had just bared, and the roar of the crowd hit Jimin like a physical force as his smile snapped into place out of pure survival instinct. Jungkook felt it immediately, the shift. Jimin's hand slipped from his shoulders squared, his eyes transformed into that polished brightness the world adored. The audience screamed their names, chanting in waves, and for a split second Jungkook almost hated them for not knowing what it cost to look this flawless. They moved into formation. Music thundered through the speakers, vibrating in Jungkook's bones, but his focus fractured. Every step felt heavier than usual, every count sharper. He stole glances at Jimin whenever he could, noticing the tension in his jaw, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Halfway through the performance, something went wrong. Jimin missed a beat. It was subtle, so subtle most fans wouldn't catch it, but Jungkook did. Jimin's foot hesitated for a fraction of a second, his body lagging behind the choreography they'd practiced 1,000 times. Panic flashed across Jimin's face before he masked it, but the crack was there. Jungkook's heart slammed against his ribs. He adjusted instantly, shifting his position to cover the mistake, improvising just enough to pull them back into sync. The crowd roared louder, mistaking the tension for intensity. As the song ended, sweat slicked Jungkook's spine. They bowed, smiles fixed, and disappeared backstage to thunderous applause. The moment the curtain fell, Jimin staggered back, pressing a hand to his chest as if trying to hold himself together. Jungkook caught him by the arm before anyone else noticed. "Hey," Jungkook whispered urgently. "Look at me." "I'm fine," Jimin breathed, but his voice trembled. "No, you're not," Jungkook snapped, fear bleeding through. "You almost collapsed out there." Jimin yanked his arm free, eyes flashing. "Not now." "When then?" Jungkook shot back. "After you break in front of everyone." A stylist nearby froze, pretending not to hear. Jimin lowered his voice, anger sharp and desperate. "Do you want rumors? Because this is how rumors start." "I don't care about rumors," Jungkook said, louder than he meant to. "I care about you." The room went still. Jimin stared at him, shock and something dangerously close to relief flickering across his face. "You can't say that here," he hissed. "You can't keep doing this." Jungkook stepped closer anyway, defiant now. "I'm done pretending my silence is protecting you." Jimin laughed, brittle and strained. "You think honesty saves people, it destroys them." "Only when it's used as a weapon," Jungkook replied. "Not when it's used as a lifeline." Jimin's breath hitched. His carefully rebuilt walls wavered again, cracks spiderwebbing fast. "You're making this impossible," he whispered. Jungkook's voice softened raw. "You already said you're tired. Let me carry some of it." For a moment, Jimin looked like he might refuse out of habit alone. Then his shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "If I stop holding it together, I don't know what's left." Jungkook didn't hesitate. He pulled Jimin into a quiet corner, shielding him with his body as staff rushed past. "Then fall apart here," he murmured. "I've got you." Jimin's hands fisted in Jungkook's jacket as a silent sob racked his frame. He pressed his face into Jungkook's shoulder, shaking, years of pressure finally demanding payment. Jungkook held him tightly, heart pounding, aware of every risk and choosing him anyway. "I hate that you see me like this," Jimin whispered through tears. "I hate that I didn't sooner," Jungkook replied. The door creaked open behind them. A manager paused, eyes narrowing as he took in the scene, too close, too intimate, too real. The tension shifted instantly, thick with implication. Jungkook didn't move. Jimin straightened slowly, wiping his face, gaze steady despite the redness in his eyes. "We needed a moment," he said calmly. The manager studied them, suspicion heavy. "You've already had too many moments lately," he warned. "Be careful." When the door shut again, the silence roared. "That's it," Jimin said quietly. "That's the edge." Jungkook nodded. "I know." Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, eyes searching for doubt and finding none. "If this explodes," he said, voice steady but fragile, "there's no going back." Jungkook reached for his hand openly this time, unapologetic. "Then we walk forward through the fire." Jimin squeezed his hand once, grounding himself. "No more hiding," he said. "No more hiding," Jungkook echoed. They stood there, exhausted, exposed, and undeniably united, knowing the world outside was already shifting, already sensing something dangerous and true. And for the first time, neither of them felt alone inside the noise. The final song faded into echoes, the last note trembling through the arena like a held breath finally released, and when the lights dimmed, Jimin realized his hands were still shaking, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of everything they had chosen not to hide anymore. Backstage emptied slowly, the chaos dissolving into tired voices and dragging footsteps. Someone laughed too loudly, someone else complained about sore muscles, life insisting on its ordinary rhythm. Jimin sat on the edge of the bench, staring at the floor, listening to his heartbeat calm inch by inch. Jungkook stood a few steps away, watching him without pretense, without fear of being seen. For the first time, Jimin didn't look away. "You didn't let go," Jimin said softly, breaking the silence, even when everyone was watching. Jungkook shrugged, but his eyes were earnest. "I promised presence. This is what it looks like." Jimin let out a breath that sounded like both a laugh and a cry. "I spent so long thinking love had to hurt quietly to be real." Jungkook moved closer, careful, respectful. "And I thought love meant enduring alone so I wouldn't burden anyone." They stood facing each other, stripped of roles, stripped of choreography, just two men who had finally named the truth between them. The fear was still there, of headlines, of consequences, of a world that rarely forgave, but it no longer owned them. Jimin reached out first this time, fingers curling around Jungkook's sleeve, grounding himself in something solid. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," he admitted. "I don't know who will disappoint." Jungkook covered Jimin's hand with his own, steady and warm. "We've disappointed ourselves long enough." That was it. The last wall crumbled quietly, without drama, without applause. Jimin felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not certainty, not safety, but relief. The kind that comes when you stop running from your own heart. Later, when they finally left the building, the night air was cool and honest. No cameras waited for them, no shouting crowds, just the hum of the city and the shared silence of two people walking side by side. Jungkook slowed his steps to match Jimin's without thinking. Jimin noticed and smiled. "Thank you," Jimin said after a while, voice calm but full. "For kneeling. Not because you had to, but because you chose to see me." Jungkook glanced at him, eyes soft in the streetlight. "Thank you for staying," he replied, even when it hurt. They kept walking, not toward a perfect future, not toward an easy one, but toward a truthful one, where words were spoken, pain was shared, and love no longer had to beg to be heard. And for the first time in a long while, that was more than enough.